Welcome to Tokyo Game Life, a Tokyo-based video game podcast focusing on Nintendo and gaming culture in Japan's capital. Your host Mono here to bring you a slice of gaming life from Tokyo. Today, Hyle of DK Vine joins the podcast to chat about what else? Donkey Kong Bananza. We dig deep into the history of the game's development, what we're loving about Nintendo's newest platformer, and analyze Kong name lore. In the feature, I take you inside Kiddy Land Shinjuku, a huge new toy stop right next to that big 3D cat. Plus, some news. Let's jump into the games and Donkey Kong Bananza with DK Vine. Today in the game section, we are looking at Donkey Kong Bananza, the newest platformer from Nintendo and the return of perhaps the company's most potassium-rich character. Joining me to chat all about it is a special guest. So guest, please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Hyle Russell. I am the editor-in-chief and co-founder of DK Vine, a Donkey Kong-based website that's been around since August of 1999.
Thanks for joining me. We're here to look at Bananza, and we've got a lot of ground to cover. But first, I want to know more about you and DK Vine in general. How did you become the world's most renowned Donkey Kong journalist?
Nobody else wanted to do it. Been a fan of, going way back, my favorite animals as a little kid, gorillas, monkeys, any primate, I just was fascinated by. And so, I became a Nintendo kid when the original NES had been out in the West for a few years. My mom actually got it and, got hooked on Super Mario Brothers and that entire series. And then one day in the early 90s, I was in the toy store and I saw this NES cartridge, Donkey Kong Classics. And being the age I was, I had no idea of what Donkey Kong was. I didn't know the arcade original. I didn't know the history. I didn't know that's where Mario debuted. All of that was completely alien to me, but I saw it was Mario with two gorillas on the cover, and it was on sale, and so I was like, yeah, let's get it. And I kind of became fascinated then, and somehow, this was pre-internet, through osmosis, I just learned the history of Donkey Kong, and then it was always just kind of a fun treat whenever he would show up, or Junior would show up anywhere. Super Mario Kart came out and I was like, wow, they actually put in Donkey Kong Jr. I can't believe they did that. But then 1994, Donkey Kong Country came out and it just completely bowled me over. It was exactly what I had always been looking for in a game, with just the presentation and the gameplay, but also the protagonist and the sense of humor. And it just became a lifelong love affair. And eventually it got to the point where I just had to express my fandom. And I'm not an artist. I'm not talented and skilled in any visual medium, but I could write well enough for a dumb teenager. And so when Donkey Kong 64 was announced, that was kind of the impetus to drive me towards starting a website of my own. And I eventually pooled resources with Chad McCanna, and we launched DK Vine in 1999, 3 months before Donkey Kong 64 came out. And for whatever reason, it's been impossible to kill. And the site has been going on and growing. And we've been doing a podcast, The Kongversation, almost on a weekly basis for over 12 years now. And when you look at the history of Donkey Kong for the past 11 plus years, that was no small feat. So, and then of course, Donkey Kong Bananza, it's been a whirlwind few months having such a high profile Donkey Kong game. And then you attach that to the theme park in Osaka and Orlando, and you've got the tie-in with the Super Mario Brothers movie, and now apparently a Donkey Kong movie in the works. It's just a wealth of things to discuss all of a sudden.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to talk about. So before we get into Bananza proper, I wanted to look at the history of the game's development. Now, while Donkey Kong showing up in the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct was a surprise for many, it was rumored for many years that perhaps some EPD team was working on a Donkey Kong title. Can you walk us through when you first became aware of this rumor, and did you think it would culminate into an early Switch 2 3D platformer?
Going back to how it was even possible that we are in the pipeline to learn about this, we were able to attend E3 for the very first time in 2015. And 2015 was kind of a year of transition behind the scenes for Donkey Kong. It had been a year after Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze was released by Retro Studios, developed that, and then they moved on to their next project. And, Donkey Kong has been bouncing around various development studios post 2002. Once Rare was purchased by Microsoft, Donkey Kong has not really had a stable development home. We've likened it to just crashing on studios' couches until it's time to leave. And so Donkey Kong didn't have anywhere to go for a while. And it was E3 2015 that Nintendo announced a partnership with Activision to put Donkey Kong and Bowser in the Skylanders franchise, the Toys to Life, ostensibly a spin-off of Spyro the Dragon, but it became a lot more than that, and it was really popular. This was kind of on the waning era of its popularity, but Donkey Kong was put in this game, Skylanders Superchargers, developed by Vicarious Visions, and Nintendo was apparently impressed enough with that game that they decided to greenlight them working on a 3D Donkey Kong game. And I learned this piecemeal throughout several years, and the trail of breadcrumbs and sources, some of the sources I met at that E3, eventually led me to learn that the Vicarious Visions project was eventually scuttled, completely abandoned by the end of 2016, I want to say, and it's a little bit nebulous, but that was the point where Nintendo made the decision, we need to give Donkey Kong a permanent home, and it's going to be us. We're going to do it. So around 2018, I really had it confirmed that was the plan, that EPD specifically was going to be working on Donkey Kong. And eventually that trail went cold. The only reason I knew it was being based in the United States. That is where the unusual development history and trajectory to get to this game, it all happened on this continent at first. And then eventually when it went across the Pacific, my trail went cold. But it was enough to go on, and it was enough to figure out what was happening with Donkey Kong. And so that has been the better part of 7 years believing in and wondering about the status of this project. And knowing everything we know about development time nowadays, figuring that the project was going to be 3D, which I didn't know for sure, but, a hunch. And also then having to deal with things like the pandemic in 2020, really driving everything to a halt for a bit. It eventually kind of started sinking that, this was probably going to have to be a Switch 2 title. It was probably being earmarked for a Switch 2 title, but I still wasn't sure. And then the April 2nd Switch 2 Direct, I don't think in any right mind I would have guessed that it would have ended with the reveal of the Donkey Kong game. Very glad it did, though.
Yeah, I remember hearing about this rumor that Nintendo was working on or developing a DK game. A lot of people joked that it should be called Monkey PD. And I don't really remember what the source was or how legit it was, but enough people believed it. And the question was, who was working on it? Even within EPD, was it EPD 8 who was behind Odyssey? Was it a 2D platformer, maybe from EPD 10, who handles the 2D Mario games? And we know now that the answer is Donkey Kong Bananza, courtesy of EPD 8, who are right here in Tokyo. And the director is Kazuya Takahashi, who is fairly new to Nintendo and previously worked at Sega and Square. So he's a major contributor who was not on the Odyssey team at all.
Right.
So Hyle, as a longtime DK fan, did you want essentially the people behind Mario Odyssey to make the next DK game, or did you have another dream developer in mind?
Well, here's the shocking thing about me, and it's almost embarrassing to say it on a podcast that's not my own, where I'm able to just let my freakish nature be exposed. But I did not play Super Mario Odyssey until 2 weeks ago.
Mm.
I played it at E3 2017, just in the demo form. And the problem is, I don't make much time to play video games if they are not related to Donkey Kong or what we call the greater Donkey Kong universe, all the connections it still has to Rare from their tenure. And like everything I saw of Odyssey looked impressive, but I just never made the time. And then I realized a couple of weeks before Bonanza came out, I should really get around to this because it would be a good education to see what this team or some of this team did before doing Donkey Kong. I'm very glad I did now, by the way. But yeah, I played Odyssey 2 weeks and I actually didn't finish it. I got through the Metro Kingdom, fittingly enough. And I walked away with the impression that this is actually a 3D Mario game that seems tailor-made to my sensibilities. I am really glad I played this when I did, because if I'd played this when it came out, I would have just been upset that it wasn't a Donkey Kong game. Because I was like, this actually is almost perfect in tone and tenor, and just the overall aesthetics and atmosphere and even humor seemed right up Donkey Kong's alley more than Mario. So yeah, it's a perfect fit.
What was your reaction upon seeing Bonanza add the Switch 2 Direct? Were you completely sold on the idea, or did you have some concerns?
As a longtime Donkey Kong fan, the very first feeling was, I'm glad it's finally been announced. It was just a wave of relief, especially because so much of our credibility was on the line for this game, if this game was ever going to get announced. And thankfully, it was, as we said. The initial trailer, and Nintendo does this with their trailers, but there was an absence of anything familiar other than Donkey Kong. And the Donkey Kong fandom has a long history and a long contentious history that I won't necessarily get into here, but because of that constant studio shifting since the Rare purchase by Microsoft, there's been this sense of constant reinvention or constant cast turnover and a lack of cohesive continuity as far as characters and just really embracing the whole totality of the franchise. And eventually I came around on games like Jungle Beat. I think Jungle Beat is a brilliant game, and I love the Retro Studios duology, but there was this feeling that there's just not enough returning elements. And so you see that trailer with Bonanza, and it's all strange and unknown and maybe unsettling, and you're just like, is this going to feel like a Donkey Kong game? And slow and steady, they reassured us. It was, I think the Nintendo Today app uploaded a trailer or re-uploaded the trailer then about 12 hours later, but they inserted a shot of Cranky Kong in it. And you're like, okay, Cranky Kong's in it. That's reassuring. And then we started to learn more characters and more elements and more callbacks and tributes, and it really just became apparent this was going to be a love letter to the entire Donkey Kong franchise, and not just Donkey Kong Country, but going all the way back to 1981, which is the best thing that I think the Donkey Kong fandom could have hoped for with this big, prominent new era that we're entering.
Yeah, I gotta admit, during the Nintendo 2 Direct, I was thinking, where's Mario? Because I was sure a 3D Mario game was coming. And I felt that Switch 2 launching with DK instead of Mario, it did feel a little risky at the time, back in the halcyon days of April. But again, if you think about it, the Mario game is Mario Kart World. So he is well represented. And after playing Bonanza, any doubts I had about the game have been completely washed away. But let's hold off on that, because there's still some pre-release stuff I want to get into, because this game really does have a really fascinating history. We've waited 10 years plus for a new DK game. So the build up to it is, I don't say almost as interesting as the game, because I think the game is more interesting, but there's a lot of fun things to talk about. What did you think about the reveal of Teen Pauline? Did that make you excited, or were you anxious that they were possibly either setting up a major retcon or were just ignoring the previous DK lore?
Well, I was never nervous, really, because for one thing, the Pauline thing accidentally leaked, and it might have been
Yeah.
a planned like little bit of it's a leak, but we're gonna get people talking. But it was the Saturday after the Bonanza reveal, so just a couple of days later, where Nintendo of Korea had uploaded the wrong art asset on their website, and it was the post Bonanza Direct art asset of young Pauline hanging on Donkey Kong's tie that ultimately wound up on the box art internationally. But we knew about this, and that kind of implanted the idea in our heads that this was coming, and it was either going to be a younger Pauline or some relative of Pauline. But I was never worried about retcons like a lot of people were, or reboots or whatever, just because of seeing Cranky Kong's dialogue in the demo, where Cranky makes a lot of just out and out references to past games and events, including the DK rap, Donkey Kong Island. He makes an allusion to fighting Mario back in the days of the arcade, which is a reference that hasn't been made quite a bit since 2002. So it was really reassuring to see. I was like, okay, nothing's being thrown out here. And just, you know what? We're going to just see how this plays out in the game itself. And so that was where my head was at even before the Pauline thing was put out front and center and made official. So yeah, like for me, also the idea of Pauline and Donkey Kong, I was ready for it because that was also, according to our sources, what Vicarious Visions was planning with their Donkey Kong game. And so this idea has been out there for 3D Donkey Kong 9 years now, actually. 9 years from one studio to another. So whether or not there was any direct inspiration from that or not, it's just been an idea that's been dying to get out, apparently.
Yeah, I think Teen Pauline, or Paultine, we'll call her, it definitely made me a bit more interested in the game because I wondered, how are they going to explain this? Are they even going to explain this? And I haven't beaten the game yet, so I don't know the answer, but I am excited to see where they take the DK story. And yes, Bonanza is out now, and we've been playing it. So let's actually talk about the game.
Okay.
For you, what's the most surprising thing about Donkey Kong Bonanza?
So, the way my brain works is I can see all the pre-release footage. I can read about the game, absorb about the game, write about the game, talk about the game every day for 3 months straight. And there are still going to be elements that, for whatever reason, don't register with me until I'm actually playing it for myself. And I avoided demos. I didn't play any of it before I got the game card home. I put it in my Switch. I started it. And the thing that I, for whatever reason, slept on was the ability to climb up walls, the automatic ability to climb up any surface that is not too slick. And Donkey Kong can just do it. And all of a sudden, the game clicked for me, even more so than the destruction, the terrain breaking. It was just, oh, wow, this is how 3D Donkey Kong should always be done. This makes so much sense for 3D Donkey Kong, and a way to make it different from Super Mario or any of its contemporaries. Like, this really validates 3D Donkey Kong. And I don't need it validated for me. I'm a Donkey Kong fan. But I mean, just for the broader Nintendo fandom out there, I was so enamored with that, going around the training area, climbing around, busting up terrain, getting the feel of the controls, getting a sense of the camera, and really, like, it ultimately started clicking with me just how good everything felt, and how a concept that could have been clunky or just so off kilter, it just meshes together in something completely unexpected, but something I think very beautiful.
Compared to Mario and a lot of other characters, DK's main games have had a pretty large variety in terms of game mechanics. Like Donkey Kong Arcade and Country are so different from each other. DK64 and Jungle Beat are so different from each other. And now we've got Bonanza. But for you, is there anything you're specifically looking for that makes you think this is a Donkey Kong game?
Oh, as soon as I started the game, you just get dropped, in the middle of the mining tunnel in Ingot Isle, and it immediately clicked for me. There was always the fear that no matter how prestigious Nintendo EPD is, would the feel of Donkey Kong, that specific quality that makes Donkey Kong different from Mario, would that be preserved, or would this just feel like a Mario game with the serial numbers filed off? And as soon as I was dropped in that tunnel and I heard the music, which I'm still not clear if it's a remix or if it's just supposed to be evocative of Life in the Mines from Donkey Kong Country. But as soon as I heard that, it was like I was put at ease. It was like any lingering doubts I had were quashed, and I was just completely on board. And then just going through it and soaking in the atmosphere. I think atmosphere is a big thing for Donkey Kong. Just that complete ability to lose yourself in the world. It was apparent from every inch of that initial area.
I think I'm a bit unorthodox when it comes to DK fans, because for me, my favorite DK games are the arcade style games. Like I would put arcade and DK 94 over country. So it is a very hard balancing act to appeal to all corners of the DK fan base. And this game is absolutely crammed with influences from so many other titles, but it also has a very distinct feel to it. Like playing the game, I can see influences from, of course, Odyssey, but even things like Zelda, Splatoon, and of course, many, many other past Donkey Kong games. And despite having so many ideas and mechanics from these games, it doesn't feel derivative. And I think the reason for that is because the destruction and terraforming mechanics are just so unlike what we've seen from any other Nintendo game. What do you think about the destruction mechanics being the game's core mechanic?
I think it works. Like, that's not something I was really sold on at first, but I also was just kind of that wait and see. Like, I'm sure once I actually get my hands on the game, I will appreciate it. And yeah, it's really hard for me though, as someone who loves nature, and that's one of the appeals of Donkey Kong, is just like why I got into Donkey Kong Country, you know, and even playing talking about the arcade games, or in this case, the ports of the arcade games that I played on Donkey Kong Classics, I gravitated towards Donkey Kong Jr. because it kind of is set in a jungle versus the girders and our arcade construction site setting of the original. But I love and revere nature, and the last thing I would want to do is go into a natural setting and completely smash it to pieces. But it's okay, you know, it can reset. Maybe the elders can reset it all, and that's just what's happening. But once you really learn it's okay, and that part of your brain just lets go, and you're like, you know, you're not going to smash through anything important. This is the game. Go ahead, have at it. And of course, that introductory area too introduces a cave-in at one point, and it does feel very claustrophobic at first, and it's a good way to get over that kind of phobia any players might have with digging through the ground, is being forced into the scenario and then digging your way out. I thought it was just brilliantly done, and by the time I actually got to the first world proper, I was on board with it.
Yeah, during the developer interview, the team talked about, we talked to Koizumi about why is DK different from Mario? And, you know, that has a lot of answers. For one is a ape and one is a human. But Koizumi said, well, DK has long arms. So that's his main differentiating point between Mario and Donkey Kong, which is kind of a strange thing to say. But if you think about it, that's what they took from Koizumi, and they really implemented it into this game. And I guess you could also argue that a lot of the Koizumi Donkey Kong games, or the past Nintendo Donkey Kong games, they were very punch focused, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Like there was a big emphasis on Donkey Kong punches things, which wasn't really in the past country games or the arcade games. So it is interesting to see that throw line come to this brand new mechanic in the game. And it also kind of makes me think of Tears of the Kingdom and like, what was Link doing? Like, he climbs so slowly and he can't punch through the mountains. So it's just, if you put Donkey Kong in Tears of the Kingdom, I think maybe an hour tops, he could defeat Ganon.
But yeah, it's a great, like you mentioned, like harmonizing all the eras of Donkey Kong. And Donkey Kong is so many things to so many people, depending on when they got into the series or their age or whatever. And like, it's a tough thing. It's funny that this game came out right around the time that there's a new Superman movie coming out, because that's another character that means so many different things to so many different people. And like, how do you do it justice where you can please everybody? And yeah, so you get a lot of the destruction and over the top cartoony violence that you might get in something like Jungle Beat. That influence is definitely there. But yeah, like the climbing aspect is kind of this kinetic ape movements that's like not one-to-one what was in the Donkey Kong Country games, but there was a lot of that fluidity and Jungle Beat as well, honestly, where you're just like bounding through nature effortlessly. And you get that in Bonanza, but also his personality is just so great in Bonanza. And that's the biggest, I think, concern I would have going into any new Donkey Kong game is how is Donkey Kong going to be portrayed? Is he going to be portrayed as an out-and-out villain? Is he going to be portrayed as overly aggressive? And I think they found the true essence of the character here, where he's got shades, but he's ultimately a good-hearted character. He, you know, he can be a mentor. He can look out for, I mean, like we've seen it with Diddy Kong and now with this iteration, we'll say, of Pauline. And yeah, it's just like, he's a little bit impatient, a little bit stubborn, but ultimately he will do the right thing. Just all in all, in both gameplay and depiction, I'm very pleased with what they've done.
Yeah, going back to the destruction mechanics, I'm waiting for punching through mountains to get boring, but so far it's not boring at all. And it really does feel like a mechanic that is just kind of inherently fun to engage with. And even when you're not punching, things like falling from a great height, that causes some deformation on the ground, hand slaps, knocking things over, being able to actually affect the world in big and small ways, it makes the game feel much more dynamic than a lot of other platformers. And let's touch on a bit about the actual platforming. So far from what I've played, there hasn't been a whole lot of what I would call traditional platforming where you need to clear a jump to get over a gap. There is a big focus on exploration and action. What do you think about these elements that the game focuses on? Would you prefer to see more Twitch platforming segments, or would you prefer the focus to be on the exploration aspect?
I'm honestly glad with the exploration aspect. I don't need well-timed jumps in a 3D Donkey Kong game. And I think like there's just enough in there to please that part of my brain. And even just things like climbing up ropes or, you know, like it's enough in there where it feels like a translation of 2D Donkey Kong. Yeah, again, like that's kind of Mario's thing. And Donkey Kong's always been in the shadow of Mario. It's always been late to the party because, you know, after they split off and Mario went to Mario Brothers and Donkey Kong just kind of stagnated after Donkey Kong 3 until 1994 when we had the first resurgence of Donkey Kong. But Donkey Kong's always just been doing things Mario does, but a little bit differently. And so it's really cool to see this actual real innovation in a Donkey Kong game that really does feel like this is the most impactful Donkey Kong game since Donkey Kong Country, which was the most impactful one since Donkey Kong 81. Like, I feel like those three will be looked back upon as the beginnings of new eras, but also games that changed the industry in their own ways. And yeah, like, I think this is brilliant. If you had asked me back when I first heard they were doing Donkey Kong, and I was following these rumors for better part of 7 years, if you had asked me back then, how would you feel if this was all about smashing rocks and digging through soil? And I'd be like, no, that sounds terrible. But it's one of those things where my dream Donkey Kong game, that if I just daydream and picture my ideal Donkey Kong game, in execution, it would probably be terrible and boring to play. So I like being surprised. I like having a game that I never asked for, aside from make a really good Donkey Kong game that's faithful to all eras of Donkey Kong. Aside from that, surprise me, delight me, give me something I never knew I wanted. And I feel like they've done exactly that.
Yeah, I'm a big Mario fan. I bleed red, both literally and metaphorically. So naturally, I am inclined to the Mario levels where you need to be incredibly precise as you navigate through platforms. But I don't think that's the only way to design a platformer. And Bonanza is doing enough so far to really set itself apart from Mario, which, as somebody who, you know, I want a 3D Mario game, if you're not going to give me that, I want something different and new. I don't want something that's kind of derivative or maybe a step below Mario. Yeah. So I think they've done a really great job in, okay, this is a 3D platformer, but this is not a game Mario can do. unless I guess he works out a lot and he becomes really, really strong. But otherwise, it really is a game that's only for DK. What are your thoughts on the setting of the game so far? I know you're not that many levels into the game, but I feel like it's very unlike what we've seen in a lot of past DK games.
Yes and no. So, yes, I am only, full disclosure, when we're recording this, I'm only at, really, I guess, the second world. You want to define them as worlds, but I am taking my time. I'm almost 20 hours in, but I am savoring it. I spent 4 hours in the initial tunnels because I didn't want to miss anything. I didn't want to miss any little Easter egg. I didn't want to miss any detail. I wanted to take it all in because I've waited so long for this. So that being said, though, I know enough, when the game was announced back at the beginning of April and following along with the underground world revelation, I thought that was brilliant. Even before I saw Cranky Kong, the hours before I knew Cranky Kong was going to be in there and there was going to be this like thematic connection to past Donkey Kong games other than Donkey Kong, I was kind of getting on board with it because the underground world, this idea of a hollow earth domain, it's so like primal and mythic, and it kind of fits with so many past Donkey Kong games. I mean, we've had Lost Worlds in Donkey Kong Country 2 and 3, and like it's been a thing going down into this subterranean, like undiscovered world full of mystery and secrets. And for me, like, there's so many things that are like pulled from classic literature and legends and fables in past Donkey Kong games that they're doing it here as well. And I feel like that's just perfect. It's just the kind of thing where, again, I would have never thought where to set Donkey Kong. Set it in the hollow earth. Like, that wouldn't have been one of the things I would have pulled out of my brain. I would have been like, no, put it on a tropical island. I want to be in a jungle. I want to be on a beach with Donkey Kong. But once I learned this, I was like, you know what? That's perfect. That's exactly perfect for Donkey Kong. And again, if this had been another Nintendo franchise or another Nintendo IP and I played it, I would have been like, oh, this would have been perfect for Donkey Kong.
Yeah, the journey to the center of the earth idea, it is a really great backdrop. Though, of course, you do kind of see the sky or a facsimile of the sky. So I don't know if it actually feels like we're getting deeper and deeper, but nevertheless, each level does a great job in adding some twists, both in gameplay mechanics and theming. Like the lagoon layer is the quote unquote water level, but it has a neat mix of other ideas. Like the first layer is kind of a Zen garden. And then you go deeper into more of I would call it a water world-esque scavenger society with a lot of makeshift pipe structures. And some of the later levels, I won't spoil, but we have seen them in the direct, like the ice level. It has some really interesting ideas where, okay, it's not just you're slipping around on ice. They blend all these different things that you would not imagine. I really want to know the brainstorming session of how they made these levels, because they're taking all these influences and making something that's totally unique, even though it still has the framing of a lot of typical biome things that you would see in platformers. Like, okay, there's the ice level, there's the water level, but their rendition of it is something I've never seen before. This isn't much of a spoiler since you do see it in the direct, but there is a tropical beach level, and this level is absolutely awesome. It's my favorite level so far. It's one of the sections, I guess, similar to Layer 2, where it doesn't have a lot of story segments in it, and it's much smaller than a typical world, but it is amazing. And the rainbow block mechanic, which we saw in the direct, that lifts you up, it's incredibly fun. And the direct did not oversell how fun it is to interact with this mechanic. And the thing you're supposed to do in the level, the thing you're trying to accomplish, is maybe the most fun I've had with the game so far. Do you have a moment in the game so far that made you really think, okay, they've completely nailed this?
Oh, there's actually so many that it's really hard for me to pick just one. Honestly, the dialogue, all of the dialogue in the game and the world building. I'm very much somebody who looks to be immersed and just completely lose myself in a game world. I mean, that's why I got into video games in the first place, right? It's just to have that escapism. And so I never want to feel like I'm playing a video game. I want to completely believe I'm in the video game. And this is the first Donkey Kong game since Donkey Kong 64 where we have just a wealth of non-playable characters who talk. And even then, it just completely outpaces what they did back in Donkey Kong 64. But just talking with all the salvager monkeys or even the prospector monkeys and just hearing all the little things they say and all the little like twists that are like familiar but just slightly askew for this world of Donkey Kong. And it's just lots of little elements, little pieces of dialogue, little interactions Donkey Kong has with the people he meets and helps. It's so delightful, and I'm completely buying into everything so far. I'm never at once thinking, oh yeah, I'm playing a video game. The only time I'm ever thinking that is when I'm playing in handheld mode and my battery's almost dead because I've been spending so much time lost in the game.
What are you liking so far about Donkey Kong's moveset? He's definitely much faster than I think a lot of people expected.
Yeah, it's great. Donkey Kong, when you pair him with other Kongs, he's kind of got to be the slower one, right? Because like speed is Diddy or Dixie's thing, and you can't really juice him up too much if he's in a traditional Donkey Kong platformer. But here, I think that speed and agility is, it's very important. Like you mentioned Breath of the Wild and like Link climbing, and you wouldn't want to replicate that in a game where that's so much of the game itself is climbing up and getting around. And I think, he's moving more like an orangutan than a gorilla, but I'm fine with that. It works in this context. And I think that, like, I don't think Donkey Kong's ever felt as good as he feels in this game. Just that kinetic crunchiness, and it's just perfect and so responsive.
Yeah, I need to see a race between Donkey Kong and Mario now. Which one is faster? Because it seems like they're neck and neck. And I'm still trying to master the movement tech because there is a lot you can do. There's rolling, you can do long jumping, and you can also roll in the air. And then there's also hand clapping to get a little bit more distance. So DK is way more mobile than he's ever been before. And you've also got turf surf, chunk jump. Is there a particular move or ability DK has that you're loving?
Well, I'm always a fan of the roll jump. The roll jump is the quintessential ability you have to master in a Donkey Kong Country game. And to have it replicated so well in 3D, even though I haven't been using it that much because there hasn't been much need to jump over distances, it's still nice to break it out every now and then. It makes me smile. But yeah, turf surfing is fun. I really am enjoying that. It's just a fun way to get around, and really just swinging big chunks of rock is so satisfying. It's kind of like almost soothing in a weird way, just seeing Donkey Kong just clear out a massive amount of ground by swinging a big rock. There's this render that they released before the game came out of Donkey Kong holding the big rock, and just something about it that spoke to me, and playing the game, I know why. It's just immensely fun to destroy things with a big boulder.
Yeah, I'm really loving the turf surf. I feel like that's the key move that you need to master if you really want to do a lot of like the crazy high level tech. I've looked online about people just like doing weird skips and all this amazing stuff. So I'm trying to master turf surf. And yeah, you mentioned before like that, again, go back to the deformation. It's just, yes, it's so inherently fun just to break something. And going back to Rare a little bit, well, one of my earlier, this is mind-blowing things in a video game is that in GoldenEye 007 for N64, when you shot something like a wall, it would have like the bullet hole in the wall for GoldenEye. And I don't want to say that's the inspiration for this, but affecting the actual game world in some small way, I think that's just, again, going back to this is something that Nintendo figured out in people's brains. This is something they scientifically dug into your brain and figured out what humans find fun, is that just this sort of small and large scale deformation affecting the world in some way. It really adds on to the game in a way that I think I didn't expect at all. But another thing I wanted to touch on, this game has Zelda-style shrines. How do you feel about how they've integrated them into the game?
Oh, yeah, I'm fine because it just feels like a lot of them, and I know we have bonus areas, that's a different thing, but for me, the whole concept of going into this little bespoke area that is apart from the main area or level. It's been a part of Donkey Kong going back to 94 with the bonus areas and bonus stages, and It just feels like the underground world evolution of that. It's a little bit more mystical, a little bit more mysterious down there, and that's the form these Donkey Kong conventions take. And if it just so happens that it resembles something from Zelda, well, so be it.
Yeah, they're really creative so far, and they are, even comparing it one to a Zelda shrine, they are pretty distinct in how you tackle them. And a lot of them do also have distinct theming and visual styles. So it's not the uniform style that's in a lot of Zelda games. And I do like there's some that are, I guess, platform or exploration focused. There's more combat ones as well. And they're also shaped different in the world. So know immediately once you go into it that, oh, this one is really helpful.
Yeah.
Let's touch on the characters and story a bit. What do you think about the main players like Pauline and Voidco?
I love them. So far, I have to admit, I got a little attached to the notion of Odd Rock. And so I did try to savor the Odd Rock form of Pauline for as long as I could, knowing that it was finite. But yeah, like I think that, and again, I'm not spoiled here and still trying to suss out the mystery of Pauline and what's going on there. But I think, once upon a time, this would have been controversial, pairing Donkey Kong with Pauline. For me, it would just be like, I don't know if that works. I don't know if pairing Donkey Kong with a human character works. But I think it's honestly kind of brilliant. And it's also a nice onboarding idea for new players who aren't familiar with Donkey Kong to kind of, I know the developers spoke to this, kind of being their eyes and ears. And like, I think that Voidco, I always like when there are new Kongs. That's always a treat. Right. And it's seldom seen in the last 20 years. I mean, the last like actual established, they have got Kong as surnames, new Kongs, were the Jungle Beat Kongs, Dread Kong and Ninja Kong and Sumo Kong and Karate Kong. That's it. And yeah, so it's been a while since we've had like new Kong. So, if we have to have new villains in this rather than having returning villains, I do like that they are all Kongs. And I think they're great designs that fit in with past Donkey Kong characters. And I think Void Kong and Grumpy Kong and Poppy Kong, they all just like, I think they've been embraced almost universally since they were named. I think everybody really got on board with them pretty quick as a fandom.
Yeah, I'm really liking the young Pauline. She has a ton of personality, and most of the dialogue is from her. And that's something they talked about in the developer interview, is that there needs to be a character who is kind of driving the structure of the story, because, Donkey Kong, he really just wants bananas, which is somewhat relatable, but you also kind of want a human in there to maybe add some humanity to the story. And yeah, I'm also a big fan of the Void Kongs. Their designs are great. I love their dialogue. I love just, everything about them. I do kind of wonder, is there some sort of predestination paradox among the Kongs? Because, of course, Grumpy Kong, he was kind of doomed to be grumpy if he was named Grumpy Kong as a child. So I'm wondering if he was named Happy Kong, would he have a totally different path in life?
Yeah. No, I think they really need to rethink the way they go about this. Although, Cranky Kong seems to have adopted that name.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
So it could just be that maybe Kongs are born with a name, and then when their personality finally surfaces, they're given their true name. Because I somehow doubt if Kiddy Kong is any older, he'll still be going by Kiddy. So,
Have you met the Fractones yet? The little blue guys?
I just got down there, yeah. I just met them for the first time, although I'm, of course, very familiar with the concept already.
What do you think about them?
Yeah, they're fine. This is kind of maybe the rare fan in me, but you just stick googly eyes on something and I'm fine with it. It's part and parcel of their games, especially like Banjo-Kazooie. So yeah, it's fine. I like that there are strange species and cultures down below in the underground world beyond just, your typical animal tribes. So I think they're fun and they add a little bit of identity to Bananza that you don't get in other games.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying the Fractones because they're oddly an NPC that is really tied into the game mechanics. Like you can break them easily. I can't think of another NPC that you can just beat up so wantonly, but they'll be okay. And you can also, if you throw like material at them, they meld into the material. So you
Right.
can kind of change the shape of the fractone, which again, I don't think is there another game where you can just change what the NPC looks like? I don't think so. So like there's so many amazing ideas in Bonanza that I've never seen before in not just a Donkey Kong game, but just in a game in general. And yeah, the googly eyes, they're really cute. And you see some like fun variations of them later on in the levels. So yeah, I'm a big Fractone fan. I kind of want one to be added to Mario Kart World. And like, I guess their trick animation, they could just change their shape. So I
Yeah.
think I'm hoping that will come. You can also customize DK's looks. Do you have a favorite outfit or fur color so far?
So, I'm such a Donkey Kong purist that it's hard for me. It's like painting a mustache on the Mona Lisa, as they say.
Mm.
And then this is a new design anyway, so I'm still getting used to Donkey Kong's new look. And I think it's great. There's enough of every Donkey Kong design in there that I feel like it is the most universal Donkey Kong has been up until this point, but I'm still getting acquainted with it. I'm still marveling at it. And so I don't want to dye his hair. I don't want to put pants on him. This is weird, but I am starting to experiment. Now, of course, being of the era when I grew up, the N64 collectathons, I am trying to get everything as I go, as cumbersome as that is. So like all the fossils, I'm trying to collect all the fossils before I move on, which is maybe why it's taking me so long. But finally got all the fossils in the lagoon layer, and I used them to buy some of the new looks, and I'm experimenting with it. We'll give a few a try, but right now I'm just classic red tie, no britches.
Yeah, I also had that feeling in Odyssey where, you can just totally change Mario's outfit to anything. That was a bit, it took a little bit to get used to because, he's got to have his hat. A lot of the costumes grew on me, and I do like the DK costumes here as well. And the fur colors definitely reminds me a bit of Smash Brothers, where you can just change his fur color to things I've never seen in any Donkey Kong game before, but they need costumes, so why not? Later on, you do unlock a dark red color that I really enjoy because it's close enough to his default color where it doesn't feel like a total shift from Donkey Kong's personality. And yeah, but you can also just go crazy. You could have like purple fur and orange pants and weird things like that. What about shoes? Should Donkey Kong ever have shoes?
See, I feel like he's one of those people where you've got to feel the soil in your toes or else you don't know what you're doing. I feel like it would be, sure, he could wear shoes, but I don't know. I feel like minimalist clothing for any of the Kongs. They're always missing some article of clothing. So yeah, it's like everybody was freaking out about he was wearing the mining jeans in the trailer. But for me, like I've seen Donkey Kong, like in the Skylanders, he's wearing the jumpsuit. And so I'm used to him wearing clothes. But yeah, it's like at the end of the day, you got to leave something off of him.
Yeah, I have not unlocked his weird robot outfit from Mario Kart World yet. I don't know if that's in the game. So yeah, it's a bit more conservative in terms of costumes. But before we wrap up, what are your overall thoughts on Bonanza? Did it live up to expectations?
Well, obviously, maybe it could really get terrible the further I get. I somehow doubt it, though, given how much fun I've been having. Yeah, I would say this is exceeding expectations. My expectations were there's going to be a new Donkey Kong game. Hope they do it well. And so far, from everything I would want to see, including things I never knew I wanted to see, they are nailing everything so far. And of course, I'm following along with the game. I know, my favorite characters, Diddy and Dixie, are in there somewhere. And so that's kind of like, whew, I will see them eventually. And I can really just appreciate everything new and fall in love with some of these new characters. And like that sense of discovery, of discovering stuff I will cherish for the rest of my life. That is something I've not felt for over 11 years now as it relates to Donkey Kong. And yeah, like I'm really eager and excited to see what's to come next, and it still feels surreal though. We're still early days. This game doesn't feel real. I'm really worried I'm going to wake up and it was all just a dream. And, I'm sure, you would be fine with a new 3D Mario at the Switch 2 launch, but, I'm so over the moon that Donkey Kong is back in such a prominent way, and in a game that's getting almost universal praise and is just really the toast of the town, all the towns, Baboom Town on down. It's been really validating to see as a Donkey Kong fan, because Donkey Kong's never gone away, but Donkey Kong's kind of been on the sidelines for a long time. And this feels like when I got into Donkey Kong back in 1994, where everybody was talking about Donkey Kong, and never thought I would be back here again.
Yeah, I'm absolutely loving it. It's completely exceeded my expectations. I was a little skeptical at first because I was thinking, is this just going to be a worse version of a 3D Mario game? And while I'm not going to put it above Odyssey just yet, I do think they've delivered something that wears its inspirations on its sleeves, but also feels very different from what they've done before. Like, if the next 3 DK games were sequels to this, I wouldn't complain. What about you? Do you think this should be the path DK takes for the Switch 2 generation, or would you like to see them mix it up with the next entry?
So I would be fine with a sequel. I would be fine with Bonanza 2, and they sometimes do that. Nintendo sometimes does that with games early in a system's life. They've still got ideas, and, versus DLC, it's like, we're going to do a sequel. But I also kind of want to follow the 3D Mario path. I think there's definitely elements of Bonanza that can and should carry forward going into future 3D Donkey Kong games. But I would like to see what else they could do. Surprise me again, because I don't want to just get stuck in my ways and be like, what is 3D Donkey Kong? Well, it's either exploring a tropical jungle or destroying terrain deep underground. Like, surprise me again. You did it with this. But yeah, just I think next, give me EPD developed Donkey Kong Country or Super Donkey Kong. Like, give me their take on that, because right now I have complete faith that they would nail that as well. But yeah, just that's also the great thing, is Donkey Kong is back. Donkey Kong's got a home again with Nintendo, and we could see new types of Donkey Kong games on a semi-regular basis again. And as a fan, that excites me more than anything.
All right, so that was our look at Donkey Kong Bananza. Easy recommendation on my end, and I'll definitely be talking about it more on this podcast in the future, but I think you're going to be talking about it a lot more than I will. So Hyle, where can people find you?
All right, so the Conversation podcast, you can find us on dkvine.com, but we are also on most podcast networks, Spotify, Apple Podcast. We also upload the episodes to YouTube, our YouTube channel, DK Vine, SoundCloud as well. So basically you can find us anywhere. And yes, we are doing weekly Bonanza episodes, and they're going to be spoiler free up until the point in the game we are discussing. So the new episode will be our first impressions and just discussing Ingot Isle, the cave-in area, sub-layer 10. We spend almost 3.5 hours just discussing that. And we're going to be going through all the major groupings of sublayers, doing an episode on that, and then we will eventually get to post-game spoiler discussion, but we're going to make sure that everybody can listen to it as they go along and nobody's left behind. So yeah, if you're into Bonanza right now, we will have you covered for probably several months going forward.
Great. And the links to everything are in the podcast description, so listeners, check it out. Hyle of DK Vine, once again, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Today's feature is on Kiddy Land Shinjuku, a newly opened toy store right in, I'd say, the heart-esque area of Shinjuku. It's fairly close to Kabukicho, which you all know as the inspiration for the setting of Like a Dragon. And it's also very close to the huge 3D cat screen that's become a viral sensation these past few years. Like, you just walk down the same street, then bam, to your left, you see a huge LED screen, and inside the Okariya building is what I'm covering in today's feature. Kiddy Land is one of the more well-known toy store chains in Japan. It was founded all the way back in 1946, 2 years before Toys R Us. But the flagship location in Harajuku opened up later in 1966, but that's still here today. I have always planned on doing an episode on the Harajuku store, but I decided to do the Shinjuku one first, since it's much newer and, to be honest, more impressive than the Harajuku store. But I would definitely cover the Harajuku store in the future. Did you know Kiddy Land in Harajuku basically brought Halloween to Japan? It's true. Now, the Shinjuku one is probably not going to start a new holiday, but despite that, it's bigger and, dare I say, better than the Harajuku location. It opened up in April, so just a few months ago, and my wife did tell me about it previously, but I didn't really make it a priority. So when I decided to check it out a few weeks ago, I definitely thought, whoa, I should have come here sooner. Now, I've been saying it's a toy store, but it's mostly a character goods focused type of store. So you won't find soccer balls or bicycles here. It mostly focuses on selling merch related to popular mascot characters, both from Japan and overseas. Chikawa and Rilakkuma are here for Japan, and Snoopy and Miffy are repping other countries. But let's be real, I didn't come here for some Hello Kitty merch. I came here for game merch. And Kiddy Land has more than you would expect, and it's all conveniently located on the 3rd floor. Its biggest game-related section is Kirby's Poo 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 Market, a large area that mimics a supermarket. There's a big round sign hanging above a statue of Kirby holding shopping baskets, and he's perched above a big shelf filled with exclusive Kirby plushies. I've talked about Yamashiroya before on the podcast, another huge toy store with a massive Kirby presence. And while Kiddy Land doesn't have as much merch compared to Yamashiroya, it still has quite a lot, and some Poo 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 Market-themed stuff you can only find here. Oh, and by the way, in Japanese, Dreamland is called Poo 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 Land, so that's the reason for the naming. I don't know if it's exclusive, but I did see a Sakura Mochi Kirby plushie, which looked fantastic. You'd think they'd run out of ideas by now, but no. Plus, the walls are decorated like a supermarket. You've got pictures of Kirby-themed milk, laundry detergent, medicine that you probably shouldn't take. The theming is excellent. And since the Shinjuku location is much more spacious than the cramped Harajuku store, there's plenty of places to take some great photo ops. And one of my favorite sections of Poo 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 Market, there's a small area in the back that houses retro Kirby merch. It's not for sale, but they do have stuff there from the 90s and 2000s inside this display case, which is really awesome to see in person. I'm talking about stuff like Kirby's Dreamland figures or Tilt and Tumble Game Boy cases. Plus, there's a lot of anime-related goods here too, and Kirby 64 origami. There's a lot of interesting stuff here that you probably won't find elsewhere. I do like that they took the effort in to make this little museum inside their store. They totally didn't need to include it, but it's a great little window into a bit of gaming merch history. But if you want to buy some new Kirby stuff, there's more than enough. Tons of plushies, nanoblock sets, kendama, shirts, keychains, board games, lights. If you've got money, Kirby wants it. Again, Yamashiroya is pretty undefeated when it comes to Kirby shopping, but the exclusive goods and fun theming here make it worth visiting for Kirby fans. And close to Poo 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 Market, that is kind of hard to say in English, but I'll do my best. Next to Poo 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 Market, you have some other gaming sections. They aren't themed, but you can get your fair share of Mario and Pokemon merch here. There's a huge display section for Mario plushies, ranging from giant blue shells to hats to the Koopa Kids. One thing the Shinjuku store nails is the art of the display. Since the store is very spacious, they don't need to Tetris everything together. They can have a big table with a bunch of plushies stacked on top of each other. Now, I wish I could say there's some awesome exclusive Mario merch here, but honestly, not really. I'm sure maybe some of the stuff you can find here isn't sold overseas, like the Takaratami or Epoch Mario playsets, but it is a lot of plushies and toys that you could probably find anywhere in Japan or even in the West. Now, on the other side of one of the Mario toy aisles is a wombo combo of Pikmin and Dragon Quest merch. On the left side is Pikmin, and on the right side is Dragon Quest. For Pikmin, you've got the plushies and the terrarium sets. Not as many things compared to Nintendo Tokyo, but the terrarium sets are easily the best piece of Pikmin merch, so you can pick one up here with ease instead of staying in line for an hour at Nintendo Tokyo. The Dragon Quest section, of course, has some plushies, some plastic figures, a mug, bath bombs, and I want to say Splatoon bath bombs were also shoved in here at the bottom. I'm honestly surprised there wasn't more of a Splatoon section. There's a ton of Splatoon merch in Japan, but it seems weirdly absent in Kiddy Land. Now, to the right of Kirby Market, you've got a Pokemon section. There's a huge back wall covered in Pokemon plushies, and again, the display is so nice looking. There are 3 huge bookshelf-style shelves with Pokemon neatly lined up on them, and a few of the larger Pokemon put on top inside these boxed shelves. I think those on top are on sale, but I do pity the staff member who has to fetch one. These are not the small Pokemon Fit plushies, but instead the more, I want to say normal-sized plushies, I guess that's correct. So every Pokemon isn't here, but you've got a good mix of your favorites. The Kanto starters are here, the Evolutions are here, don't worry, Mimikyu is here, Ampharos, Jirachi, Rowlet, Tatsugiri. If you're into LGM though, you're out of luck. There is an aisle dedicated to other Pokemon merch, but mostly the remint blind boxes of plastic dioramas and the nanoblock sets. I would say these are more, adult-themed goods. Of course, I don't know how adult a plastic diorama of Umbreon jumping over the moon is, but it is something that you can put on your desk while you work. Now, there are 4 floors, but the gaming stuff is all on the 3rd floor. So I'm sorry, I won't run down the Snoopy section, but in general, all the themed areas are pretty expansive and visually impressive to walk through. There's a lot of care put into how they arrange and display the merch, especially the plushies. It does feel almost like a mini exhibit of popular characters in Japan. Even if you don't buy anything, you do get a sense of the style and appeal of these mega merch movers. Plus, there's a ton of decorations, either with statues or murals on the wall, so there are many great photo opportunities. Now, should you go out of your way to check out Kiddy Land Shinjuku? For Nintendo fans, the biggest thing is Kirby's Poo 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 Market, which is a little surreal in that a fake Kirby supermarket exists, and it has exclusive merch. But if you're not going to pick up some supermarket-themed merch, a lot of the stuff here is stuff that you can find at other toy shops like Yodobashi Camera, Nintendo Tokyo, and the Pokemon Center. But Kiddy Land Shinjuku is in a pretty great spot. If you're exploring Shinjuku, you're almost certainly going to pass by it. So why not swing by for 5 minutes, take a picture with Kirby, and then dip out? Kiryu could easily walk to it from Kamurocho. Okay, that's it for the feature, so let's check out some news. Now, I hate to start with sad news, but let's get it out of the way. GiGO number 1 in Akihabara is closing down on August 31st. This is the big red arcade in one of the busier areas in Akihabara. If you've ever seen a picture of Akiba, you have probably seen this building. It is a fairly famous landmark that's been in Akihabara ever since the early 90s. It was previously run by Sega, and that big red building with the huge Sega logo on it, I mean, when it comes to Akihabara, it doesn't get much more iconic than that. But another amusement company called Matahari is moving in and turning it into an amusement center. So it's not like they're tearing the thing down. I'm sure a few months from now, the building will look exactly the same, but will have just a different sign out in front. But it is sad to see the last vestige of Sega's connection to the building go away. And one by one, these arcades are going bye-bye. Even converting them into crane game buildings might not help the decline. But there are still a few great arcades in Tokyo, and I even had an episode about it on the podcast, so visit them before it's too late. We had a Pokemon Presents, and I'm not going to break down everything. I'm sorry, Pokemon friends, I just have nothing to say. But the best announcement is easily Poke Park Kanto. This was announced actually quite a while ago, but there has been zero follow-up until now. I mean, it is what they said it would be, a Pokemon-themed land within Yomiuri Land, which is a big amusement park outside of Tokyo. This area was previously home to the amazing Pokemon Wonder attraction, which was like an outdoor escape room where you saw puzzles to find quote-unquote real Pokemon in the world. It was honestly one of the best gaming-related things I've done in Tokyo. And I did do an early episode on it, which I want to say is ironically my least listened to episode, but that was when I was dumb and put the feature at the end of the podcast instead of at the start. But go listen to it if you haven't yet. And yes, just use the timestamps to skip to the Pokemon Wonder section. But the point is, I think this is going to be really amazing. The gimmick of Yomiuri Land is that it's kind of built into nature. There's hills, there's bamboo forest, it's incredibly beautiful and atmospheric. So doing what they did with Pokemon Wonder, which was integrating Pokemon into the natural landscape, I have very high expectations for this. If done right, it should make us feel like we are really in the game. It opens up early next year and tickets go on sale late in 2025, so I'll try to nab one ASAP. And Pokemon Legends ZA was shown off. There's a Mega Dragonite now. I mean, I loved Arceus and I love Pokemon XY and Kalos, but I am kind of not excited for this game. I'm trying to figure out why, and I think it's because we haven't seen much of the wild areas and how they are different from the ones in Arceus. I mean, Arceus had the hook of exploring these huge open landscapes filled with dangerous Pokemon. The ancient setting also really contributed to the different vibe of the game. But here they really haven't shown off why setting it in just one city is a cool idea. I mean, I will buy and play it, and I'm sure once I get my hands on it, I'll be having fun. But so far, I do feel the game is lacking some sort of extra oomph that gets me really excited. Speaking of getting excited, Drag and Drive Global Jam, a free online playtest, is happening in early August. So we can all play Drag and Drive before launch. And I have zero interest in this game, but I'll absolutely try it out. I mean, maybe I'll be converted, you never know. I was very much looking forward to Nintendo showing off a dual mouse game. And well, this is it. So I got what I wanted. But I am curious about the developer. I think EPD4 is possible, but I wonder if it could be somebody else. And last bit of news, the Zelda movie got its 2 stars. Bo Bragason is Zelda, and Benjamin Evan Ainsworth is Link. Both are very young, 19 and 16 respectively, and both are relative unknowns with a few credits to their names. Definitely an interesting direction for the movie. Even the Super Mario Bros. Movie had a lot of star power behind it. But they seem to be really banking hard on just the IP. But I have to imagine the villain, who will probably be Ganondorf, will be more of a known actor. Javier Bardem? He's kind of dwarfy. Pedro Pascal? Sure, put him in every movie. But I think by casting complete unknowns, the budget and expectations are somewhat in check. This isn't going to be a $250 million production that brings in $1 billion. We'll see what direction they go, though. Is it going to be Ocarina of Time? A new origin story? Is it secretly one of the Oracle games and then ends with a cliffhanger for the next Oracle game? We're a mere 2-ish years away, so we'll see. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks as always for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast on your favorite app. Leave a 5-star review as well. It really helps. This podcast is also available on YouTube, so like and subscribe there as well. I'm on Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram. Just search for Tokyo Game Life or find the links in the podcast description. If you like the podcast, be sure to share it with your friends and on social media. The next episode will be on August 10th. See you next time. Matane.